So welcome to our next intriguing session featuring Thomas Friedman, internationally renowned author, reporter, columnist, and newly minted Tel Aviv University honorary doctor, who will now be discussing how Israel should navigate the post-October 7th world, together with Lelosy Arish, Israeli journalist, news anchor, television host, and actress. So please welcome to the stage Mr. Thomas Friedman and Lelosy Arish.
Good morning, everyone. If you're excited, I'm really excited. Because for me, I interviewed Mr. Friedman for several times, but it's the first time that I actually meet you face to face. So it's a great honor for me to be here. It's not every day that we get to sit down with someone who has spent his career not only witnessing history, but helping us to make sense out of it. From the halls of power in Washington to the streets of the Middle East, from the front line of technological change to the heart of global diplomacy, few voices have had the impact and reach of Thomas Friedman. And today we are privileged to have this rare one-on-one conversation. Together we will explore the forces reshaping our world, reshaping the Middle East, and perhaps most importantly, ourselves. Thank you, Thomas, for being with us this morning.
Great to be with you, Lelosy. Thank you. And thank you.
So, every single time that I start a conversation or even like speak in front of people, I say to myself, okay, with what should I start today? And like we say here in Israel, Baruch Hashem, we have every day, like something, and every night, something interesting that is happening here. But unfortunately, we will open this morning with the terror attack in Washington, D.C. that took the lives of two Israeli embassy workers. And first of all, we, of course, pay our condolences to the families. I'm always thinking to myself that the war that we have here, that we are fighting here in the last almost 2 years, is a direct effect on Jewish people in the diaspora. And it seems sometimes that we don't understand that here in Israel. And today, this night, we saw the results. Whether we like it or not, Jewish people are connected. Straight connection between Israel and the diaspora, wherever they are. And I think that my question is, where are we going with this?
Any other questions you have?
No, a lot. A lot.
Well, first of all, Lelosy, it's great to be with you.
Thank you.
And it's great to be with you in person. It's great to be here at Tel Aviv University. I've had a wonderful week here, and I'm honored to have gotten this honorary degree. And I, as I said at the President's house, there's a lot of people boycotting Israeli universities now.
Yeah.
And I said I want my presence here to be understand that I am boycotting the boycott. Okay, so it's so that's what. Well, like you, I was everyone in this room. I assume I was awakened at 3 a.m. By sirens from a missile attack from Yemen, and so I'm actually didn't get a good night's sleep. If I'm not as coherent as I usually am, it's because of the Houthis. It's blame them. And then I have a terrible habit when I wake up and I check my phone. And of course, I checked my phone, and then I saw the killing of 2 Israeli diplomats in Washington. I spoke at that museum just a few months ago. It was founded by dear friends of ours, the Smalls family, who are neighbors there, and we've actually donated to that museum. So it's not like just some place.
It's personal.
Yeah, and so, you know, beyond the obvious, this is terrible, it's despicable, it's cowardly. I'm very attuned to my first reactions to things, you know, I mentioned this in a talk I gave here the other day, that there are times that I actually open my computer and there's an avatar of me over my shoulder, and it's saying, I wonder what he's gonna write. Because I just, you know, sometimes we'll let it just watch where my fingers go, and see what comes up. And what struck me about the story as it unfolded, of course, I was the first one to know who did this, and who were the victims, but who was also the perpetrator. And as you've seen, it turns out his name was, it was Hispanic American, Latino. And they said that he shouted, "Free Palestine." And I didn't know why, but I was just staring at my computer screen. I said to myself, why didn't he shout "Free Ukraine"? Why free, you're Rodriguez, or you know, why was it "Free Palestine" and not "Free Ukraine"? So the Ukraine story is a story I'm very involved in.
I know.
Go to Kiev, so then I asked ChatGPT, I did all this in 4 in the morning, how many Russian civilians have been, Ukrainian civilians have been killed by Russian attacks just in the last 2 months. Because if you've noticed, the Russians have started going after Ukrainian civilians, if you follow that story.
Yes.
And it turns out, actually, it's around 48, since the war started, around 48,000 killed and wounded, but 12,000 killed, you know, the rest wounded. And so,
What, it's a PR thing?
it's just, what I'm just saying is that there's something about, we all know, and this is the hard thing about covering this story, that there are, there's something about Jews, and something about when Jews act with power, and when Jews you know, commit violence, that stands out over and above anyone else, you know. And what that's about and why is a long and a mysterious story of anti-Semitism in Jewish history, and I'm not even equipped to sort it out. But when you sort of write about this story, it's one of the hardest things, you know, Lucy, to keep straight, because why did he not shout "Free Ukraine"? Why did he not shout "Free Sudan"? Why did he not shout "Free Yemen"? Why did he not shout, actually, "Free Gaza" from Hamas? I mean, you know what I mean? So, and so, believe me, I actually appreciate if you don't clap, because I'm actually going to piss you off later. So, and I'd rather you not boo. So this is not this is not
only the
crossfire.
beginning.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just struggling to figure this out, and I'm doing it like real time in front of you. So, I'm just telling you, these are the things I wrestle with as someone who has to think about this, you know. And I fully expect my editors will call me, I mean, knowing them here, saying, would you like to write something, which means we'd like you to write something. And so, because I'm always thinking about this all the time, but that how do you sort all that out, okay? If I showed you my email this morning, I have an email, I have 3 people I don't even know. One was from someone who knew I was here, said, you have to look at the posters in the Tachanat Merkazit of hostages, where they have, people have put up quotes from them, things they said, very personal.
Yeah.
Okay? They said, and he sent me a whole picture of those. Got another email from someone who said, you have to understand, there's a group of Israeli academics now who are organizing against what we fear is a genocide we're perpetrating in Gaza. This is my email just in like the last 3 hours, all right? And so this is what I'm always navigating. And so for me, it's what is the signal in the noise, and how do I keep my head straight in all of this? One way I do it, actually, is I never do this, okay? I actually don't speak publicly about this issue because it makes people crazy. And no, I'll be honest with you. And so I really don't expose myself at all, okay, to anybody, and not on any side, because you got to keep your head straight. But I'm the way because this is about covering October 7th.
Yes.
So I would just take you back to the very beginning.
This is what I wanted to ask you, because
Let me just finish this thought,
Yes,
which is that because I'm so old and I've been doing this for so long, I'm 71, and I've seen everybody do terrible things to everybody. I covered the Sabra and Shatila massacre. I covered the Hama massacre. I covered the U.S. Embassy bombing. I covered the U.S. Marine bombing. I covered the Lebanese Civil War. I've seen terrible, terrible things. And the way I keep my head and my eyes on the prize is I don't keep score. If you want someone to tell you who is worst in this story, you got the wrong cowboy. I don't do that. I'm focused on one thing, and that's how to get out of this, and how to get out of it in a way that maximizes the opportunity, freedom, and security for the most people. And that is frustrating for some people.
Yes, of course.
And other people really appreciate it, but that's my thing.
So I would like to go back, actually, to keep our eyes on the ball, like you said, to keep our eyes on and I think that the ball, the prize, let's say, is basically the entire Middle East going through changes, and we will get to that. But I would like to ask you a personal question, because, you have like, let's say, dates in history where you remember where you've been. So everybody are asking where you've been on September 11th, where you've been.
Here.
When
I was at Tel Aviv University.
you were at Tel Aviv University.
I was in President Porat's predecessor's office,
Wow.
Itamar Rabinovich.
So I will ask, where were you when you first got the message of what is happening on October 7th?
I was actually, we have a home in California, in Monterey, and I was there, and watched it obviously unfold, and made a mental note not to go right away, but to stand back and actually try to see this from afar, because another thing I've learned, that some of the most dangerous words in the Middle East is the world will never be the same. Actually, it is. The other four most dangerous words are, we're going to finish this once and for all, okay? And so because of that, I wanted to have some perspective. And I waited 3 weeks, and then I came, and I only did one story. One long story. And it was, I went with my friend Avrum Burg, and a friend of his who was a Bedouin member in Knesset, to a Bedouin village near Beersheba. And I interviewed these two Bedouin families who, the story was an amazing story. They had one of their brothers was working in Kibbutz Be'eri, bless you, had fled.
I thought you would say Gesundheit.
That's right. Had fled the kibbutz in the morning, and he ran into a woman who had been riding her bike from the kibbutz. It was outside, when the attack hit, and they found each other, and they hid together in a bush. And he borrowed her cell phone to call his family in Beersheba. They got in a Jeep, came, used Google Maps to locate them in the bush. They rescued her. Then they barreled down the highway, ran into a flying Israeli army checkpoint, which thought they had kidnapped her. She then saved them. Then they went to the hospital in Beersheba, where Israeli Arab doctors and nurses treated both of them. And the next day, the guy who drove the car was at his ATM in Beersheba and heard to Israelis say, "There's a dirty Arab." And I wrote that story in great detail, one of my all-time favorite columns, because the message was, folks, it's complicated.
It's complicated.
Okay? And if you want to present this as a black and white kind of thing, and the Israelis are all evil, and Hamas, they're all heroes, and it's complicated. And so I so recoil from anyone who tries to simplify this, that that was the message I wanted to get across. What actually happens here is that the Bedouin saves the Jew then saves the Bedouin, the Israeli-Arab doctors then save the two of them. That's real life, you know.
You know, you're bringing tears to my eyes because it's hard. Because this is the message that I think a lot of Israelis are trying to make since day one.
Yeah.
We are all into it,
Yeah.
like Jews,
Yeah.
Arabs, Muslims, Christians living in Israel, and it is complicated. This is not the
Yeah.
black and white that you
Yeah.
watch from outside. This is not, of course, this is anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
Of course, it's hatred against Jews. But us living here,
Yeah.
citizens
Yes.
of the state of Israel, it's a totally different
Yes.
story.
Yeah.
And for us citizens, Arab citizens living in Israel since October 7th, it's very complicated.
Well, that's why it's hard for me to express my full contempt for what happened at Harvard and Columbia in the wake of this. And that people would project onto the side of a building, "Glory to the martyrs." What the fuck? You know what I mean? Really, you pardon me. You know what I mean? And I have, again, a personal issue with Hamas. It's, back in 2002, February 2002, I did an interview with Crown Prince Abdullah, which is the most important piece of journalism I ever did, which was in which he laid out his peace initiative for the Middle East, which was really my idea, which he basically repeated back to me, but that's okay. And I can tell you that story. And 2 months later, the Arab League organized a summit off that column, and they produced the Arab Peace Initiative. It was March 26 and 27 in Beirut. I deliberately didn't go to Beirut because I didn't want to be sort of, distracted from this thing, see what they do. On the evening of March 26, the first Arab Peace Initiative, calling for full recognition of Israel, 2 states, trade, security, diplomatic relations, in return for full withdrawal from West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem, a Hamas suicide bomber walked into a Passover Seder in Netanya and blew himself up. That was their response, not to the Jewish, to the first Arab Peace Initiative. Fuck you, okay? And so when people come out and say, glory to the martyrs, what are you talking about? How stupid are you, This is Lenin's useful idiots. At the same time, if you want me to talk about Ben Gvir and Smotrich, I'll do that too, okay? Because
we will get to them.
Yeah,
Don't worry.
Yeah. Because I happen to believe that 3 things can be true at the same time.
Because I so agree with what you're saying, because I think that after this horrible massacre that occurred on October 7th, there is a great historic opportunity happening in the Middle East, and the geopolitical, let's say, a situation that we're dealing with, and somehow, bringing this great opportunity for Israel to be recognized by Arab Muslim countries. To actually, I don't think that people even realize that a normalization with Saudi Arabia actually can solve the Jewish
That's right.
Muslim
been my whole point from the very beginning.
conflict, let's say, or disagreement, let's say.
Yeah.
And I think that people don't, when I see that we are lately are left out from the party. We were the cool, kid in the neighborhood who everybody hated or liked, but we were the cool kid. And right now, it's like we were kicked out of the party, and everybody is partying except us. When it should be our biggest opportunity, historic opportunity, to actually make a difference and to have common interests that brings us brings us as Israel a better future.
So I'll go back to explain why I agree with you, Lucy, and why I share your view. I have to go very back to the beginning of my career, which is that I talked about this at the President's house the other night. You know, I graduated from Oxford, a degree in Arabic Middle East Studies. I got hired on Fleet Street by UPI. And the number 2 man in the Bureau got shot, and they asked me to go replace him. Okay? Your predecessors got shot. How would you like to go to Beirut? Okay. But that's what I signed up for. I wanted to be in the room where it happened. So my wife, my little Jewish wife from Des Moines, Iowa, we go off to Beirut. And the first 2 stories I cover are the Iranian Revolution, first 3 stories, excuse me, the Iranian Revolution, the takeover of the Grand Mosque in Mecca, and the signing of the Camp David Peace Treaty. That was my greeting to the Middle East. And little did I know that the dynamic between these 3 stories would shape my entire time here until last year. Okay? So now everyone knows about the Iranian Revolution, and that launched Iran on its whole reshaping of the Middle East in its own way, creating these proxy states in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen, being a really malign actor. Much more important was actually the takeover of the Grand Mosque in Mecca. And it was a hard story to cover. As you can imagine, you're sitting in Beirut, Saudis letting nobody in. But just to let you know what happened, imagine that a group of puritanical Catholic priests took over the Vatican, went up in the spires, and said that the Pope was a drunkard, a gambler, and a woman chaser. Be a pretty big story in the world, okay? That's what happened in the Muslim world equivalent. Jihadis took over the Grand Mosque in Mecca, went into the minarets, and said the Al Saud family are drunkards, gamblers, and women chasers. For 30 days, they couldn't get them out. They finally got the French Foreign Legion to help them get them out. And when they did, the Al Saud ruling family said, that's not going to happen again. And what they did was take Saudi Arabia and the entire Arab Muslim world on a giant fundamentalist right turn, competing with Iran over who is the most legitimate Muslim authority. There were women Saudi entertainers on Saudi TV before 1979. There were women airline attendants on Saudi Airlines before 1979. All that ended, no driving, no nothing. It changes the entire face and character of the Arab Muslim world and ends up in 9/11, basically. So what's happened since? 2016, I get a call from my friend Abdurrahman Rashid, who runs Al Arabiya, and says, Tom, there's a new Saudi crown prince, and he'd like to meet you. So that's great. And I said, would you come meet him? I said, I would, yeah. I've been reading a little about him. Sounds interesting. His name's MBS. He calls me back the next day and says, will you be nice? I said, Abdurrahman, I'm always nice. I can beat him up from here. I don't need to go there, you know. So I go, I interview him, and I said, now this is really interesting. He doesn't even speak English at the time, so he did all in Arabic and a translator, and he's a different, really something very, very interesting. I did the first interview with him, and then I followed up, and I realized what he represented, and I framed it for him, and he picked up on this. You're reversing 1979.
Wow.
Okay, that's what he's doing, and now you see it in full living color. Okay, he has reversed that whole story. Now, he did something terrible with Khashoggi, and I condemned him for that, and I took enormous criticism for having supported him and after he did that, but I never took my eye off the prize. Folks, this guy's reversing a giant historical, a very bad thing, turn, and he's reversing it. What happened here? Parallel to that. And this Prime Minister Netanyahu deserves credit, and the whole Israeli what they did in taking down Hezbollah and defanging Iran, not completely, but in the conventional sense, completely, basically destroyed the Iran threat network in Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq. Yeah. Now suddenly, you get the Syrian revolution, you have the best Lebanese government, cleanest, most honest, most decent, since 1975, Nawaf Salam and President, what's his name? No, in Lebanon. Joseph Owen, yeah. So it happens, my best Lebanese friend is Nawaf Salam, who's now the prime minister. So I know these people really well. We have a chance for peace between Israel and Lebanon, Israel and Syria, Israel and Iraq, completely reversing that whole trend that started in 1979. And my frustration right now is I see an Israeli prime minister who is ready, prefers to have peace with Smotrich over peace with Lebanon, Syria, and Saudi Arabia. And that is a really bad trade.
You know, I hear you. I so hear you. You know, I'm asking myself, does the Israelis and the Palestinians have the courage that Menachem Begin had and Anwar Sadat had? Or maybe, do they have the characteristic leadership to actually understand how enormous this opportunity is for Israel? Because we are talking about leadership.
Yeah, it's an enormous opportunity. This is a big moment, and that's why I tried to put it in the full historical context. You know, Lucy, you don't need me to, you can pick up Israeli newspapers every day. You know, there is a huge frustration here by many Israelis that the prime minister is prioritizing his own personal political survival over the needs and interests of the state of Israel. And I happen to believe that's true. And I think it's a tragedy at this moment. I don't think there's some easy solution here. I don't think that, don't get me started on Hamas, because I can do absolutely the same thing. They have prioritized their personal survival over the literal physical survival over all the people of Gaza. But these two people have been enabling each other for a long time. Yeah. And they're still at it, basically. You know, so I don't know what breaks that cycle. But what I'm trying to do in my own work now is to frame for people the context, you know, of what is going on in the region, which is part of what's going on in the world, basically, because what MBS is about, he wants to basically, you know, people ask me, what was the most important thing that happened in my career? You know, I've been doing this since 78, actually. If you ask me, what's the biggest thing that happened in my career, the most important thing, I will tell you it was the creation of the European Union. Now, Americans will do anything for the EU except read about it, okay? But I happen to believe that the European Union is mankind's greatest creation, a continent that from time immemorial was known for tribal, sectarian, and religious wars, the last three of which 1 million of my brothers and sisters in America lost their lives fighting to basically contain World War I, World War II, and the Cold War, becomes the freest center of free markets, free people, the rule of law, and human rights. I'm part of this lucky generation that gets to live in a world of 2 United States and not just one. Now that is pretty amazing. Now what basically the vision of Joe Biden was, and MBS, is an EU of the Middle East where Saudi Arabia is Germany. And Israel is France, okay? And that this becomes the core idea, linked up with India, IMEC, this whole idea. Mm-hmm. You have a whole alliance, you do it, it's energy, it's trade, it's everything. I think that is a bold vision. And it's one that I think Israel would not only enormously benefit from, but everyone in the region would benefit from Israel. And so that's what's out there. Is it easy? Is it automatic? No, not at all. Nothing is. But if you stand back far enough and you look at the sweep of history, what's going on, that's what's going on. Because basically we're going into an era where the 3 biggest problems in the world are going to be managing AI, managing climate, and managing disorder. And that is a project that cannot be done by one country. It can only be done by a coalition of countries, a complex adaptive coalition. So what's going on here also is part of an even larger global trend, in my view. Yeah. And that's what I'm trying to urge people to keep their eye on.
So when Donald Trump was reelected in the last elections, let's say that the Israeli government was really happy. Yeah. They said, okay, now we can win the Gaza war, now we can do whatever we want, now nobody will tell us what to do or stop us or threaten us. surprise, surprise,
Yeah.
even Donald Trump lost patience to the way that we're handling the war, the lack of policy that we have in this war. Are we losing the United States also?
Well, you know, there's a couple
Specifically,
questions. Yeah,
even our
Donald-
best
yeah, yeah,
friend,
yeah.
Donald Trump?
Well, Donald Trump is only best friends of Donald Trump.
Trump.
So let's start there, okay? And Donald Trump looks to the Middle East, and he says one thing.
His eyes on the prize.
I'm in the business of making money, not giving money. So he sees Saudi Arabia, that's making money. But nationally and personally, okay? UAE, making money. Qatar, making money. Israel, giving money, okay?
So what do we have to give?
No, that's his whole point. He doesn't, if I were Israel, I'd be very concerned about the renewal of its 10-year military security aid from the United States, because he comes out here, who can give me money? By the way, I take American Express, Venmo, PayPal, and by the way, even more so Bitcoin, especially my own meme coin, okay? Look, countries gave him a 747. Did you give him a 747? Okay, because they just gave him a 747 yesterday. So that
we have
is,
very good hummus.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. So never underestimate the sort of cynical, nature of this. I don't think he's abandoning Israel at all, but it's hard for me to know what. I'm so worried for my own country. I have a lot of bandwidth for worrying for Israel, but right now I'm so worried for my own country.
But are you surprised by his approach towards Israel? Like his approach of seeing this global change, seeing what is happening in the Middle East, the Abraham Accords, saying, okay, we need to just realize that everything that Israel did in the Middle East after the Gaza war, Hezbollah,
Yeah.
Lebanon, Syria, he's watching this and saying, okay, guys, I see it. If you don't see it, it's your problem. Are you surprised by this reaction of his?
One of the questions people asked me, I did a column last week in which I said, this Israeli government is not an American ally. This Israeli government is working to undermine the American national security structure in the Middle East going back to Camp David. This is an Israeli government that prioritized in its coalition agreement annexation in the West Bank. So people often ask me, well, you must take a lot of criticism. Oh, boy, I wouldn't want to be around you. None, but I'll give you two straws in the wind. That column was tweeted out by Steve Bannon and Piers Morgan.
Okay.
Okay? People here might want to think about that. Piers Morgan and Steve Bannon, Trump's two most conservative allies, tweeted out that column. You are losing the American right. Okay?
Wow.
So forget the left, the Democrats, they're gone, okay? But when Steve Bannon is tweeting Tom Friedman's column on the Middle East, you're in a different world. And people here, I think, and that's why what Yair Golan said, and I would have chosen different words. He probably would have chosen different words. But I say this now from a journalism point of view. You realize no independent journalists have been allowed to go to Gaza. Okay, you have to go as part of an Israeli guided tour. That's the only way you can go to Gaza. One day that will end. And Gaza is going to be overrun with journalists. And that is not going to be a good day.
I want to take you and I want to ask you as a Jewish, Me Too here
Yeah.
get a lot of criticism
Yeah.
about my ideas, about
Yeah.
my perspective.
Yes.
And a lot of curses, social
Yes.
media,
Yeah.
whatsoever. And one of the days, one of my friends asked me, are you hurt by all these attacks? Are you? And I said to him, how can I be hurt by these attacks that Jewish people attack
Right,
me,
sure,
the
yeah.
Arab Muslim?
Right.
When I see that Jewish people are attacking Jewish people in the Holy Land, cursing, wishing their death, attacking hostages' families, hoping that their children will stay in Gaza because they don't agree with the government, because they want to end. And I told him, I'm watching this as an Arab Muslim citizen living in Israel.
Yeah.
And I'm saying to myself, if the Jewish people cannot love one another, how can they love somebody else? How can they look at me and actually love me
Yeah.
or respect me if they're not respecting one another in the Holy Land 3,000 years after the Jewish people prayed to get back to the Holy Land? And as a Jewish man, when you're seeing this, when you're watching what is happening in Israel, on the division that is happening in Israel from the outside, how do you feel about that?
Well, first of all, I'd say that it's well known in the New York Times. I said this to someone the other day who explained it. So I've actually never looked at Twitter. I've never looked at Facebook. I've never looked at TikTok. I've never looked at Instagram. And I've never smoked a cigarette. And my plan is to die saying
The benefits of life, you know?
I plan to die saying all five, okay? So I consume no social media. And as I said when I started, I'm actually not a real open guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing. I'm focused on that. And I've been doing this so long now that whatever you say about it, it doesn't really matter. Twitter's not a real place. I try to explain that to all my journalist colleagues, you know. So because of that, Lucy, I actually didn't show up here this morning and say, did you see what they said about me on Twitter, Liz? That is so unfair. How could they say that about me? I leak zero energy. I'm on to my next thing. Catch me if you can. Just spell my name right, okay? But I am not, I cannot tell you how little I care, okay, about what is written about me. And I waste no time on it. Because people will stop me and say, you know, did you see, you got lit up on Twitter yesterday. I say, really, how many people? Must have been 7 or 8 people. 7 or 8. 7 or 8 people stopped me at the airport to ask me, you know, to say they really enjoyed it. Did they count? Did they count? So it's not a real place. And so I just don't get caught up in that because you are what you do at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, either your reporting stacks up or it doesn't. Either your books, you know, survive or they don't. And so that's really what I'm focused on. If you build a diamond hard reality around your work, no amount of criticism sticks in the long run. And if you don't, no amount of spinning will save you. So you might as well focus on the diamond hard reality. Now, I blessedly am not in a tiny fishbowl like you are, okay? And so I have the freedom to do that. And I know what I'm about. And not that I read the comments on my column all the time, so it's not like I'm out there saying, I don't care what anyone is. No, I'm interested.
You're aware.
I'm aware of what's going on, you know. But President Herzog gave the most beautiful introduction to me at the dinner at his house. Some people here were there, and it really brought me to tears. He said basically, Tom Friedman really annoys me. Okay, okay, and but I know where he's coming from. I know what he's doing, and I'm glad we live in a society, you know, that has and we must have these kind of voices here. And it was, and I so appreciated that. So I've always told people, you know, to understand Israel, you have to hold 3 thoughts in your head together at the same time. Number 1, Israel is an amazing place.
Yeah.
When you look at what has been built here, where this university in 75 years, it's an amazing place by way of education, science, health, ingathering of exiles, language, its culture. It's an amazing place that you and I are sharing the stage, okay? Yeah. Number 1. Number 2, Israel does some really bad stuff sometimes, okay? Really bad stuff in the West Bank, really bad stuff in Gaza. And number 3, Israel lives in a crazy neighborhood. It lives in a crazy neighborhood where people really do bad stuff to each other and to Israel. I have no problem holding all 3 of those thoughts in my head at the same time. Yeah. Unfortunately, most people either want to say, it's amazing, it's amazing. They just do bad stuff, bad place. They're in a bad neighborhood, leave them alone. No, it's complicated. And I have no problem holding all of that together with also a direction of knowing this is an amazing place. It is trying, for the most part, to do good things for itself in the world. It has a minority, a growing minority, that has other priorities that I think are really dangerous and unhealthy. Got to keep all that together. Same, you know, in the Arab world. And I'm alive to those trends. And what all my work is about is trying to empower the good guys and weaken the bad guys. And that's what I do. And People like it, they don't like it. And by the way, people forget, when you're at the New York Times and you're me, people think I'm writing for New York Jewish Week. Okay, let me explain this to you. Okay, I have more readers in China than there are people in Israel. Okay, let alone in India or in Europe or in the Arab world, and I'm very attuned to them too. And I can light them up. I was featured in the Iranian newspaper, 2 weeks ago. So but the way I keep my head is, one is I don't do this, frankly, and I stay on the story, and I stay close to reporting. If you don't go, you don't know. If you don't go, you don't know. So I'm still out there like that ever-ready rabbit, reporting. And I have a wife who will beat the shit out of me if I get out of line. So it's, and she is my editor. And I have friends who I really respect. And if they get mad at me, then I know I need to course correct.
When you are watching, you've known Benjamin Netanyahu for a long time. You know his political
We've known each other forever. Yeah.
What do you think happened to him in the last, let's say, 10 years? Because if we are looking at the Likud at a time where Yitzhak Shamir stepped out of the Knesset,
I was here then.
When Kahana went on to speak, and now we're watching Benjamin Netanyahu collaborating and actually bringing Kahanis into the government. What happened? How come the Likud party, the liberal Likud party, that looked at these extreme voices and said, this is not Israel, this is not Israeli society, this is not the face of Israel. How come the Likud party, the face of the Likud party right now, is Smotrich and Ben-Gvir?
Yeah.
All around what happened to Benjamin Netanyahu
I
brought the Likud to this point?
I've not talked to him in a long time, but it's pretty clear to me he went on trial.
The trial.
Yeah. And Israel's a country that puts prime ministers in jail and presidents. And I think that just overrode everything, and I think he lost his way. By the way, it is, my view is Israel is to America what off-Broadway is to Broadway. I mean, all the same trends in both places. So Donald Trump is the same thing. I mean, he faced jail, and he basically made his own pacts with the devil, and we're facing the same challenges now in the United States, just on a bigger scale. And so 2026 is going to be a big year for democracy in the world. I wrote when it was diagnosed that President Biden had prostate cancer. I just landed here. I'd been up for 24 hours. And
it's amazing that you're talking about 2026.
Yeah.
Because yesterday, Benjamin Netanyahu held a press conference, and he was not willing to actually say in a clear way that we will have elections in 2026.
Welcome to the new world. It's so a lot's on the line right now. Now, Israeli civil society, frankly, has been amazing in the last 2 years, beginning with the judicial reform issue and on to this. So I've been so impressed by Israeli civil society. It's easier in a small country than it is in a transcontinental, country, and we're all resisting in different ways. But I think democracy is on the line and it's on the ballot in both places. And so I was, a couple weeks ago, I was out to dinner with my family, and it was, my editor called me and said, you got to write something about Biden. He's a friend of yours. And so I'm blitzed. I've been up for 24 hours, but again, it's one of these things. Just opened my computer. What came out? Well, I'd been out to dinner with my family in Washington 2 weeks ago, and my phone rings, and it's Joe Biden. So I told my girls that I got to go outside. I got to take this. It's too noisy in here. I go outside, and he says, Tom, I'm just worried sick about the future of NATO. I'm worried sick about the Atlantic Alliance, and I'm thinking of giving a speech about it. What do you think? And I'd like to talk to you about it. So we talked for a few minutes, and I said, well, let's set up a time when we can do this. I'm standing in a parking lot, And I went back to the table and I sat down with my girls, said, what did he say? I said, you know, honey, Joe Biden, frail of mind, weak of body, not always so coherent, has more gut commitment and understanding of America's role in the world and America's importance to the world than this entire Trump administration. And people here should remember who he is and what he did for Israel at a key time. You know what I mean? That's, Donald Trump was next door and he didn't stop in. And Joe Biden, frail of mind, frail of body, weak of mind even, got on a plane because his gut told him that's where he should be. And the way he's been treated here by certain people is a shanda. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, for us to see Joe Biden coming down from the plane after October 7th, when we felt that we are orphans.
Yeah.
That was the feeling on October 7th, that we are orphans,
Yeah.
that nobody's taking care of us. And I think that for me, when I saw him going
Yeah.
down from this plane, I said to myself, Dad is here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, we can agree or disagree about a lot of things,
Sure.
about policy, but it felt
Yeah.
that somebody is taking care of you.
Yes. Yeah.
This don't.
Someone has your back.
Someone
Yeah.
has your back.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I totally agree
Yeah.
that even, just sometimes just take your head down and
Yeah.
just say thank you.
Yeah.
And,
It's
and
really easy,
that's it.
actually,
It's
you know.
very easy.
That's
It's very
why
easy.
I wrote that column. So many people wrote me and said, thank you just for saying that, Because now it's should he have left, should he not left, and he should have left and early, and it's all true, but it's why I love the fact that I have a column. Why I'm still doing this at 71 is that I can feel something and I can write it and I can share it with the world, and that is such a privilege. And I am not giving this up. So it's
We don't want you to give this up.
yeah, so
You said 2026 is going to be a very, how does it look from the outside that Israel, great Israel, with the great IDF, the greatest army, one of the greatest armies in the world, are not able to actually win a war against a terror organization that is basically, right now, is a guerrilla
yeah.
after almost 2 years. How does it look from the outside? You know what? Even on the, I will be very shallow,
Yeah.
PR view.
Yeah.
It doesn't look good.
It's
And I understand that it's an ideology.
Right, yeah.
Because there's the Hamas, you can
Yes.
win,
Yeah.
like on the ground, but you cannot win in ideology. But how does it look from the outside?
So I wrote a book in 1999. It was my first book on globalization. I wrote Bear to Jerusalem. My second book was called Lexus and the Olive Tree. And it was actually the first book about globalization. It was about the tension between this globalization trend and then the things that drag us back, into history, our olive trees and whatnot. And in that book, I told the story. I coined a term, what I called the super empowered angry man. So I said, we live in a world today of superpowers and super empowered people. And my model, this was 1999, of the super empowered angry man was a guy named Osama bin Laden. Why did I do that? Because Osama bin Laden, Al-Qaeda, blew up the US embassies in Tanzania and Kenya. Bill Clinton responded by firing 72 cruise missiles at bin Laden in a base in Afghanistan. And when he did that, Lucy, I said, wow, we just fired 72 cruise missiles, $1 million each, at a person. I said that was the first war in history between a superpower and a super empowered angry man. And you're dealing with the super empowered angry people now, and the Houthis in Hamas. That's a new category, which makes the world is so complicated now, what we're going into, because government, first of all, to run any, I have to say to President Porat, you have all my sympathies. To run anything today is impossible, okay?
Yeah.
I mean, to run any organization, because everyone's super empowered now. And so you have to deal with so many new forces. And so we have to govern a country now, especially a big power, the United States. You're dealing with superstorms, super intelligence now,
Yep.
super connectivity, and super empowered people. And the Houthis are simply another manifestation of that. A bunch of guys in flip-flops, basically, in a country that's running out of oil, just woke me up last night with a long-range missile. And that is only going to get worse in a world of AI. Because, you know, they can now go to Llama, Meta's open source AI, and put in there, how do I best bomb Israel? Okay? How do I improve this long-range rocket? And so, again, part of the method to my madness is to try to damp down these conflicts now before we get to an age of super empowerment where it's not just going to be Iran. It's going to be everybody's got these things. And so that's, it's a whole nother story we could talk about all afternoon, but that's the book I'm working on right now. Because, but it's all tied together. That, so I'm very, very worried about, I think running anything going forward is going to be really challenging, whether it's the New York Times or Tel Aviv University or the United States of America. And so I want to nail down as much of this as I can, because I think the world we're going into, if fasten your seatbelts, and because AI is the first quadruple use technology.
Yeah.
Well, we know what dual use is. Dual use is there's a hammer. I can use it to build a building, or I can use it to hit someone over the head. That's dual use technology, and we've dealt with dual use technologies for a long time now. AI is quadruple use. I can decide whether to use this AI system to harm you or cure cancer, but we are very close to an AI system that also can decide itself whether to harm you or cure cancer. So we're going to have to be dealing with a quadruple use technology. The only way to do that is with a global coalition, starting with the US and China. And that's why I've been to, people think I discovered the Middle East, but I've actually been to China more than anywhere in the last year. I've been to China twice in the last 5 months. Because my view is, first of all, anytime Democrats and Republicans are in total agreement on something in Washington now, tizaer, okay? And all right, so right now they're in total agreement that China is the enemy. And I'm here saying, look, I'm not here to represent, China's done a lot of bad stuff, but be very, very careful before you turn them into an enemy in the world we're going into, because they are the other AI superpower, they are the other climate superpower, and they have the other global navy. And if you're worried about managing disorder, managing climate change, and managing AI, whatever Xi Jinping and Donald Trump think they're going to be judged on by history, they're wrong. They're going to be judged on how they handle superintelligence. We are about to birth a new species. It is not carbon-based like us, it is silicon-based. But as Lady Di said once about her marriage with Prince Charles, there were 3 people in my marriage, that was the problem. There are now going to be 3 people in our marriage. Us, China, and this super intelligent thing. And whatever any of these leaders think, the part of what I'm working on is a book, it's built on phase changes in chemistry. You go from ice to water to vapor, basically. And technology is what melts things. So, printing press, computers, and now AI. So, and AI compared to a vapor because it's going into everything. It's going into that microphone. It's going into your phone, into your watch, into your hip replacement, by the way. It's going into your car. It's going into this chair. And after the show, the president will be able to say, boy, that question really made Tom Friedman uncomfortable. The AI told us that, okay? So it's going everywhere. And when AI is everywhere, like a vapor, everything becomes TikTok. Yeah. That is, look at the argument we're having in America. Can we trust it? Who has the data? Who has the algorithm? That's going to be true of your hip replacement, your watch, your car, okay? So I was in China, and I was at the China Development Forum, and they asked me to give a talk to a group of economists the next day. I said, look, my name's Thomas Friedman, not Milton Friedman. I really, you got the wrong guy. But I am a reporter, and I will simply tell you, so I got up in front of this room full of Chinese economists, the leading ones in the country, and I said, I had a terrible dream last night. I dreamt it was the year 2030, and all that America could export to China was soybeans. And all that China could sell America was soy sauce. Why? Because when AI is in everything, if we don't have a trusted framework for what's in this thing and how we use it and how we prevent it from going quadruple use, we're not going to sell you anything, and you're not going to buy anything because I can't trust it. So this little TikTok story that's going on in America, oh, that's a big deal, okay? It's the tip of an iceberg. It's telling you without trust, we're just going to exchange soybeans and soy sauce.
So you say trust. I will tell you from my experience. I know that do we have more time? 2 minutes? Last question. Okay. If I will take 5, it will be okay?
Yes. I give you permission.
You give me permission.
I'm now a doctor. I can give you permission.
I will tell you that I asked AI like a few weeks ago, is Elon Musk a threat to humanity? My X account is going to be deleted, like surprisingly, after this question. But AI gave me like a lot of, and I continued asking him, and he answered me, and him, you see, not it, him, and and then at the end, he asked me, why did you ask this question? And then I just took the phone and I said, no. That was not
right,
the meeting.
Yeah, that's right.
That was, no, I didn't want you to ask me why.
That was your first, you'll remember one day, that was my first experience with quadruple use.
I said,
You know?
what?
Yeah.
No, I don't want to give
That's
you this
right, yeah.
information why
Yeah.
I asked this question. I will ask you this. Of course, we are sitting here and we still have 58 hostages
Yes.
being held in the Gaza Strip by Hamas. And I have to ask you, as an Israeli, when I saw Idan Alexander coming back home, it's, heart fulfilling.
Yeah.
And it was so exciting to see it and so emotional. But I thought to myself, how come a Jewish American coming to Israel to defend it, to be a soldier, being taken as a hostage in a war that he fought for the state of Israel, at the end of the day, he's being released by the American government and not by Israel. How come something like this is happening? And should we actually, maybe a lot of hostages' families are saying, maybe
I think
somebody
they-
gave up
Yeah.
and
Or has different priorities. I think that's, we know.
It's frustrating.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. I can't imagine. From the beginning of the war, hostage families come to Washington. I always meet them, but I tell them all the same thing. I wish I could tell you that I have any power or influence to help your son or daughter, get out. But if it'll make you feel better, talking to me for an hour, my door is always open. So I've met a lot of parents, during the last year and a half, and it's just hard to imagine anything more horrifying than to think of your son or daughter being held in those conditions. But I'm going to be honest with you. I also never lose sight of how horrifying it would be to be a Palestinian mother or father and have to bury a 9 or 10-year-old child. And so I never, ever lose sight of that. It doesn't, what I do with that is not to turn it on Israel or turn it on the Palestinians. I simply use that as energy for how do I help get this done. Because, you know, I just end with this. Someone asked me last night, are you still for a two-state solution? Absolutely. How we're going to get there is going to have to be very different now after the war. It's going to take stages. We're not going from here to there. It's going to take stages. There's going to have to be a whole different process. But the reason I am is because, you know, people actually call me delusional. I've been called delusional on this. And to which I say, oh, you mean it's hard? Thank you for telling me. I had no idea. You know, it's hard. Oh, really? It's because of my conviction that the alternative to two-state solution is not going to be one state, not three states. It's actually going to be no states for two people. It's going to be an endless, grinding shepherd's war, and the best people on both sides are going to leave. And
They are already leaving.
they already are. And so if there's a 5% chance of that, I'm devoting 100% of my energy to that 5%. And if this one on that side doesn't like it, that one, again, I'm not on Twitter. I don't care. You know, being a columnist is not a friend growth business. If you want a friend, get a dog. You know what I mean? So it's, and so I'm totally cool, you know, with that. But I'm doing it because I also know, and I understand, really, really hard for Israelis right now to even think about that. I do believe, though, after, God willing, the hostages are released and everyone who's alive gets out alive, I think there's going to be, that's when I want to come here. Because, you know, I was saying about Middle East politics in general, everything in the Middle East important and interesting happens bad bukra. Yeah.
The day after tomorrow.
It doesn't happen the morning after. Most journalism's focused on the morning after. I'm always focused on the morning after the morning after. And I'm telling you, the morning after, this trauma is diffused. The politics in this country are going to be incredibly interesting and important. And the person who knows that the best happens to be the prime minister of this country.
So I have to ask you this question, one final
Yeah.
question. How do you think Benjamin Netanyahu will be written down in history?
Odlo. I think that story's not done. I still hold out a little bit of hope that that story isn't written yet.
Thomas Friedman, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Mr. Thomas Friedman and Lucy Arish. Thank you.